There's a moment that happens almost every day. Most people never notice it. It's small, quiet, gone in seconds. Maybe you're standing in a store after a long day. Maybe you're lying in bed with your phone lighting up the room. Maybe you're scrolling because you're tired. But not tired enough to sleep. Something catches your attention. A jacket, a gadget, a pair of shoes, a dinner that feels deserved, $100. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less. Not enough to feel serious. Not enough to stop and think. And that's exactly why it matters. Because the decisions that shape our financial lives rarely look important when they're happening. They don't arrive with warnings. They don't feel dramatic. They feel ordinary. A tap, a swipe, a quiet moment of relief. And then, life continues. Most people imagine financial success is built through big decisions. The job offer, the investment, the house, the promotion. But those decisions get attention. They get discussed, reconsidered, delayed. It's the smaller decisions that slip past unnoticed. The ones made when you're stressed, or lonely, or bored. The ones made when nobody is watching, including you. And over time, those moments begin building a life. Not all at once. Quietly, $100 at a time. It's a Wednesday. Someone will call. Daniel has had the kind of day that doesn't break you. It just wears you down slowly. He stops at a store on the way home. I wasn't planning to buy anything. But there's a jacket. Well made. Exactly the kind of thing he's been telling himself he'd get when things settle down. $110. He picks it up. Put it back. Pick it up again. Then buy it. Walking to his car, something loosens in his chest. Not happiness. More like pressure releasing. Like the day finally stopped winning. By Friday, the feeling is gone. The jacket is in his closet. And the anxiety, the one that was there before the store, is back. Slightly heavier than before. Daniel isn't unusual. Daniel is most of us. And what happened in that store wasn't really about a jacket. It was about something much older than retail. Psychologists call it present bias. The brain's tendency to treat what's available right now as far more valuable than anything waiting in the future. Not poor character, not a weakness. Biology. Our nervous systems were built for immediate threats and immediate rewards, not 30-year financial timelines. So when relief is right here, and security feels distant and theoretical, the brain doesn't deliberate for long. But here's what most conversations about spending miss. It's not just stress driving these moments. Sometimes it's boring. Research from the University of Waterloo found that boredom is one of the most consistent triggers for impulsive spending. When the mind feels understimulated, it reaches for stimulation, and a purchase delivers dopamine faster than almost anything else available. Sometimes it's loneliness, the kind where you just feel bad and don't fully know why. And somewhere around 11 at night, you're clicking buy on something you don't need, for reasons that won't make sense in the morning. But underneath all of it, the stress, the boredom, the loneliness, there's something even more interesting happening. There's a concept in behavioral research called aspirational identity consumption. We don't just buy things, we buy versions of ourselves. The person who orders expensive wine at a dinner they can't really afford isn't being reckless. They're trying to feel, for just that evening, like the kind of person who doesn't have to think about whether they can afford it. The person who upgrades apartments the week after a raise, before anything has actually changed financially, isn't being impulsive. They're trying to close the gap between who they are and who they've decided they should be by now. People don't spend money to buy things. They spend time feeling different. And then there's the force that's made all of this considerably harder. Imagine it's late, later than you meant to be awake. Someone is lying in a dark room. The phone screen is the only light, not looking for anything specific, just scrolling. In 10 minutes, they've seen a former colleague's renovated kitchen. A vacation someone from high school is apparently taking for the third time this year. A stranger's living room that looks like it belongs in a design magazine. Nobody is doing anything wrong. But something is happening anyway. A slow recalibration, a quiet downward revision of their own life. By the time they put the phone down, the apartment they were perfectly content with an hour ago feels smaller, older, less like enough. Psychologists call this relative deprivation. The feeling of having less, not by any objective measure, but compared to the specific people you happen to be measuring yourself against right now. Nobel Prize-winning economist Angus Deaton found something striking in his research. How much you actually earn matters less to how you feel than most people expect, but how much you earn compared to the people around you. That shapes self-perception in ways that don't seem to have a natural ceiling. It's not the amount, it's the gap. And when the gap feels too visible, people spend time closing it. Not the real gap, just the visible one. The premium coffee isn't about the coffee. It's about what it communicates when you walk in with it. The vacation charged to a card isn't about the destination. It's about the version of yourself in those photos. The one who looks like they're living well. The one who didn't check their balance before booking the slightly too expensive car 2 years before the old one needed replacing. That's not about transportation. That's about how it feels to drive past someone who knew you when you had less. It's not vanity exactly. It's the exhausting, completely understandable need to feel like you're keeping up with a standard that never stops moving. If this story feels familiar, you're not alone. These patterns run deeper than most people realize. And if you're finding value in these money stories, consider subscribing to Habit Wealth Stories. New stories about money, habits, and the decisions that shape our lives every week. Now let's continue. Nearly 57% of Americans couldn't absorb a $1,000 emergency without financial stress. Not a medical crisis, not a job loss, just $1,000. And yet every day, money leaves accounts in much smaller amounts. A purchase here, a subscription there. A moment of relief that feels insignificant by itself. Until years later, it isn't. Here's where it compounds. And not in the way financial advisors mean when they use that word. Pressure builds. Eventually, it needs somewhere to go. Spending delivers relief quickly, without requiring any difficult internal honesty. So the money moves. And it works. For a day, maybe 2, but the relief fades. And what remains isn't just a smaller account. It's background guilt. A noise that feeds the very pressure that triggered the spending in the first place. So the cycle tightens, week after week, month after month, until the spending stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like weather. Now here's the part that tends to stay with people. $100 a month, not sacrificed, not dramatically restricted, just redirected, invested consistently at a historical average market return over 40 years. Doesn't become a few $1,000s saved. It becomes somewhere between $80,000 and $100,000. From $100 a month, the cost of a few unplanned evenings, a forgotten subscription, the jacket Daniel bought on a Wednesday when the day got too heavy. Most people have seen the compound interest chart. They've done the math. The chart doesn't move them, and understanding why it doesn't. That's where the more honest conversation actually begins. Some people don't believe they deserve financial security, not consciously, not in any way they'd say out loud. But it's there, underneath the decisions. I'll start next month. Underneath the spending that makes no rational sense, and the strange relief of watching money leave an account that never seems to fill the way it should. There's a belief running quietly in the background. That stability is for people with a different story. That wealth belongs to people who started from somewhere different. That someone carrying their particular history doesn't quite get to have that. Psychologists call it financial unworthiness. And it's far more common than any dataset has found a reliable way to measure. Because money doesn't arrive in your life as a neutral object. It arrives already carrying everything you learned about it before you ever earned any. The arguments heard through walls when you were young. The birthday that was smaller than everyone else's. And the way you understood, without being told, not to bring it up. The first time your financial situation felt like it was saying something permanent about your value as a person. Those things don't dissolve when you get your first paycheck. They go somewhere quieter, and they surface at 11 at night when you're buying something you don't need. In this way, your shoulders tighten when you open your banking app. In the brief sense of control that comes from spending money. You know, somewhere in the back of your mind, you probably shouldn't, because at least while you're spending it, you feel like someone who has it. So what actually changes any of this? no shame. Shame accelerates the cycle. Guilt is just more weight pressing down on a system already looking for release, not information. The math is almost never what's missing. What changes this, slowly, in ways that genuinely hold, is something behavioral researchers call identity-based behavior change. The finding is consistent across decades of study. Behavior follows identity. You don't force yourself into new habits and then become a different person. You shift, gradually, imperfectly, how you understand yourself. And the behavior follows. Which means the question that actually matters isn't, how do I spend less? It's who I am at the moment I'm making this decision. The people who genuinely change their financial lives almost never do it through harder restrictions. They do it by rewriting a story. From, I'm someone who's always been bad with money. A story that makes every impulsive decision feel like confirmation of something already fixed. To something quieter, I'm someone learning to understand why I make the choices I make. Not a transformation. Not a reinvention. Just a slow repositioning of the identity that's been running the decisions all along. And when that shift begins, imperfectly, incrementally, the $100 moments start to feel different. Not restrictive, not like deprivation, just clearer. A question surfaces before the decision is already made. Is this something I actually want? Or is this a feeling I'm trying to outrun? There's a real difference between spending something that adds something genuine to your life and spending that's trying to fill something that can't be filled that way. Both might cost exactly $100. The receipt looks identical, but one leaves you feeling more like yourself. And one leaves you standing in a parking lot, bag in hand, already knowing, before you've reached your car, that it won't matter by next week. That specific feeling, that exact moment. Most people know it. Almost nobody talks about it. The $100 decision was never really about $100. It's a mirror. A small, unguarded moment where everything you actually believe about yourself, about money, about what you deserve, about the distance between who you are and who you thought you'd be by now, becomes briefly visible. Most people look away, out of habit, out of the worn instinct to keep moving, keep spending, keep maintaining a version of stability that costs more to perform every year. But some people pause, just long enough to see something they hadn't let themselves look at before. And that pause, quiet, unglamorous, invisible to anyone watching. That's where financial lives actually change. Not in dramatic decisions, in the small, honest moments that happen when no one is watching, including yourself. If something in this reached you, a pattern you recognized, a feeling you've carried without quite having words for it, leave it in the comments. Because the number of people sitting quietly with the exact same thing is larger than most of them realize. And sometimes, just seeing it written down is the beginning of something different. If you enjoy stories about money, habits, and the decisions that shape our lives, subscribe to Habit Wealth Stories. New stories every week. We'll see you in the next one.